Dear people watching and listening, Assalamu alaikum. Kindly like and share this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Kindly support me through Patreon so that I can keep making such audiobooks for you. Faith versus Materialism, the message of Surat Kahf by Abdul Hassan Ali Nadwi and translated by Muhyiddin Ahmed. Story of Moses alayhi salam and Khidr alayhi salam. Now we turn to the story of Moses and Khidr alayhi salam. It is in reality the story of our everyday life, wherein we often come across paradoxical situations which draw our attention to the fact that there are still a number of inexplicable things beyond the sphere of our knowledge. These incidents tell us that howsoever learned a man may be, his decisions, estimates, and opinions formed on the basis of his knowledge and experiences sometimes go astray. If the secrets of life were, somehow, made known to someone, we would undoubtedly find a visible change in his ideas, modes of thought, and decisions. The episode in the story of Moses alayhi salam is also meant to illustrate the point that one can never be that sure of the opinions formed or the impressions gained or else the stand taken on the basis of ephemeral knowledge. It demonstrates that it is rather impossible for human knowledge to comprehend and cover the totality of universal knowledge, and therefore one should not be hasty in arriving at a conclusion, nor should one insist on the acceptance of his opinions and impressions by others. Life is itself a parable, secretive, variable, and uncertain. The universe is too wide and incomprehensible. Its secrets and complexities stand out clearly from the external and outer realities. These present us with paradoxes which cannot be solved by man despite his constant quest for knowledge. In fact, there are numerous mysteries of nature which we might never be able to unravel with all the scientific inventions and discoveries at our command. Even in our mundane life, day-to-day affairs, we are confronted with many a complex situation created by our mistakes, half-baked ideas, hasty decisions, and immature and emotional behaviors. Now, if man were to be entrusted with the governance of this vast and complex universe, with a free hand to do whatever he likes, he would soon make it brimming with strife and trouble, and take it to the brink of total destruction. This would be simply because of his limited knowledge and sphere of action, which are unfortunately also conditioned by his predisposition to hasty action. In order to demonstrate the limitation of human knowledge, which also forms the basis for faith in the unseen realities, God selected one of the greatest prophets, Moses alayhi salam, who had been endowed with knowledge, virtue, and piety. Moses alayhi salam once stood preaching to his people when he was asked whether he knew of a man who was wiser than him. Moses answered in the negative. Not pleased by the reply of Moses alayhi salam, who ought to have ascribed his knowledge to God alone, he was directed to meet a man more knowing than himself at a place where the two seas met. Strange and bewildering events. Moses alayhi salam set out on the journey with a companion to find out the man who had been endowed with a special knowledge not granted to ordinary mortals. We would presently see that the special knowledge granted to this man of God did come into conflict with the human knowledge based on experiences and apparent situations. Khidr alayhi salam boards a boat whose owner does not charge the fare from him, but on reaching his destination, Khidr alayhi salam knocks out a few of her planks. Moses alayhi salam, not understanding the imports of Khidr's rebukes, and asks him to explain what he has done. Next, Khidr alayhi salam kills an innocent youth who had not put him to any harm, nor had his parents apparently been a source of anxiety to him. Then again, Khidr alayhi salam helps in the repair of a dilapidated wall, although the inhabitants of the place had been inhospitable to him. These were undoubtedly strange and weird happenings, which were raising a storm of curiosity in the heart of Moses alayhi salam. These inexplicable events, naturally, prompted him to ask Khidr alayhi salam to explain why had he scuttled the boat which had taken them to the shores safely. It ought to have been protected and not broken. The owner of the boat too deserved thanks from Khidr alayhi salam rather than his enmity. The innocent boy ought to have been received with kindness and looked after instead of being put to death. Similarly, the inhabitants of the village who had been so unkind and unsocial were entitled to a stern behavior. Khidr alayhi salam, however, appears to be taking decisions neither commanded by wisdom and known facts, nor warranted by emotions and instincts. Moses alayhi salam was, after all, a prophet of God, endowed with faith and a kind heart, and therefore he could not stand the flagrant acts of injustice committed by his comrade. He forgot the promise made by him at the start of the journey, to ask no question about anything, until Khidr alayhi salam himself explained it to him, and exclaimed, "Verily thou hast done a horrid thing." The Noble Quran, Surah Al-Kahf, verse 74. Khidr alayhi salam gives no reply to the questions raised by Moses alayhi salam, and goes on to complete the mission for which they had undertook the journey. At last, having arrived at their destination, Khidr alayhi salam uncovers the mysteries which Moses alayhi salam was finding inexplicable and bewildering. Anyone who goes through the Quran would see that Khidr alayhi salam was right. Whatever he did was not only correct and logical in the given circumstances, but it also unfolded practical wisdom. He did not take a wrong decision on any of the three occasions. He took out a plank or two from the boat to make it unseaworthy, and thus saved it from seizure. The fact was that the unjust king of that land seized on every boat he could get in a serviceable condition. The owner of the boat had not charged any fare from Khidr alayhi salam, and the latter repaid the courtesy of the boatman by saving his boat from seizure. The boy slain by Khidr alayhi salam was to become a source of grief and danger to the fate of his parents. He would have grown as an infidel and led his parents to renounce their faith out of their excessive fondness for him. Khidr alayhi salam thought it preferable that the parents of the boy should better come to grief on account of the boy's death in this life, rather than suffer eternal torments of the hereafter. Another son could be had if one expired, but nothing but eternal fire could be had after renouncing one's faith and dying an infidel's death. And as for the lad, his parents were believers, and we feared lest he should oppress them by rebellion and disbelief. And we intended that their Lord should change him for them for one better in purity and nearer to mercy. The Noble Quran, Surah Al-Kahf, verses 81 and 82. The wall was in a ruinous state. If it had fallen, the treasure concealed beneath it and owned by two orphans would have been exposed. It would have then been despoiled by the selfish people of the town, and the orphan boys would not have got anything of their rightful patrimony. This also illustrates that virtuous action benefits a man after his death as much as during his lifetime. Obviously, if God does not like to ignore the progeny of a righteous man after his death, he would certainly not forsake one who is upright and guiltless. Allah loseth not the wages of the kindly. The Noble Quran, Surah Yusuf, verse 90. And their Lord hath heard them, and he saith, Lo, I suffer not the work of any worker, male or female, to be lost. The Noble Quran, Surah Ali Imran, verse 195. Verily, Allah gives a fair return of whatever we do. And as for the wall, it belonged to two orphan boys in the city, and there was beneath it a treasure belonging to them. And their father had been righteous, and thy Lord intended that they should come to their full strength, and should bring forth their treasure as a mercy from their Lord. And I did it not upon my own command. Such is the interpretation of that wherewith thou couldst not bear. The Noble Quran, Surah Al-Kahf, verse 83. Limitations of human knowledge. The realities of things are very often so different from what they appear to us, according to our imperfect lights, and how much the interior of a thing differs from its exterior, the outer from the inside reality. How incomprehensible and enigmatic are the mysteries of the universe. But man is hot-headed enough to claim that his knowledge compasses all, the secrets of man as well as of universe, down to their core and innermost realities. At first sight, Khidr alayhi salam appeared to be away from apparent realities, and his actions wore the look of meaningless moves. But, to the end of the chapter, we find him more realistic and acting more wisely. The story illustrates that life is ever on the move, presenting us with situations and new realities in every age from its inexhaustible store of secrets and mysteries. The episode also elucidates that knowledge is limitless, beyond the scope of human comprehension. And over every word of knowledge, there is one more knowing. The Noble Quran, Surah Yusuf, verse 76. A challenge to materialistic outlook. The story narrated here is a challenge to the materialistic way of thought. Materialism claims that life is not an iota more than what it explains. It possesses the secrets of the nature and universe. Only that is to be believed which is tangible and capable of being comprehended by human perception. That which is perceptible is real, and the rest is non-existent, visionary and baseless. And finally, that man is the rightful owner and master of this world. Materialism elevates man to the position of lawgiver, claims perfection for human knowledge, and assumes that nothing in this vast and complex universe is beyond human comprehension. These have always been the fundamental postulates of materialistic thought, and so it is today also. The Suratul Kahf in general, and the episode of Moses alayhi salam in particular, strikes at the root of materialistic categories of thought. The story concludes with these words of Khidr alayhi salam. Such is the interpretation of that wherewith thou couldst not bear. The Noble Quran, Surah Al-Kahf, verse 83. Interpretation signifies in the phraseology of the Quran the explanation of a reality. Man is always predisposed to commit mistakes, take hasty decisions, and rashly deny the existence of a reality. But when he is confronted with truth and stubborn facts, he has ultimately to accept the realities of the situation. The fourth and the last story narrated in the Suratul Kahf relates to a man who had not only been favored with a solemn fate, but had also at his command power and glory, stupendous assets and natural resources. This man directed his energies to humble the cruel tyrants of his day for the benefit of suffering humanity, and to establish a just, humane, and civilized order of society. To be continued.